good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're watching. And we have rolling out the Superintendent's Corner for yet another season. My name is Marty O'Shea, Superintendent of Schools here in Longmeadow. And special guest this morning is Armin Ray, a familiar face to many folks in town. Armin is the chair of the Middle School Building Committee, so welcome, Armin.
Thanks, Marty.
All right. So we thought as we kicked off the school year that it might be an opportune time to update the community on where we are with our middle school project. I want to start sort of at the beginning and around the why and what has brought us to this point and why we are undertaking a middle school project. And Armin has a really thorough understanding of the needs of our school buildings. We were fortunate to have Armin as the chair of the building committee when the high school was built. Is that correct?
I was a member, but not the chair. But
okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so really understands the process both locally and working with the MSBA. The MSBA is the Massachusetts School Building Authority. But before we get to that, just to touch on the why, in your opinion, Armin, why do you think it was that we felt the need to pursue this middle school project, and what needs did you see, and what might the benefits be for us?
So definitely, as a parent of 3 that have gone through our middle schools, all at Glenbrook, and having been on the school committee for a long time in town as well, we've been pursuing statements of interest within those buildings, both Glenbrook and Williams, for years now. Top of the mind for me comes safety. When you're looking at the egress points within Glenbrook Middle School, there's obvious a need for safer environment for our children. And then based upon the studies that we've done at both schools, the physical plants are just outlived their natural lives. We're talking schools that have built in the 50s, been renovated over the years, and now it's just at a point where the cost to renovate versus the cost to build with the assistance of the MSBA has to be taken into account, and we're going down that study route.
Yeah, really. I mean, 2 middle schools that, as you say, sort of at the end of their useful life, they've been well cared for and well maintained, but we're talking about really systemic issues here at both Glenbrook and Williams.
Yeah, we definitely are. We're talking physical plant issues, roof at Glenbrook. We had to close the school recently, half days because of the heat, and it's just not an environment that's conducive to learning much further. And so it's time to take a look at going through the MSBA process, and thankfully we got the invitation and exploring what our options are for getting into the next century of learning.
And really a lot of, when you think about the major systems at the 2 schools, in many respects they're original, whether you're talking about HVAC or electrical or plumbing. The roof, as you mentioned, even the needs of the parking lots are significant. So, and these are needs that I think, in our conclusion is that they go beyond what could ordinarily be addressed with typical capital funding, and that we needed really more ambitious solutions to address the needs of both Glenbrook and Williams. Those 2 buildings have served us well, for sure.
And even issues beyond that, with some of our most vulnerable in the schools, Glenbrook, you have to go all the way around in order to access certain classrooms and be able to hit the gym or the auditorium. So it becomes an accessibility issue as well.
Yeah. It's a sort of a split level building with an open classroom design, and those 2 factors alone make a complete renovation of Glenbrook a challenge. Now, we don't know what the solution will ultimately be, and we'll talk about that shortly, but those are 2 factors that present a real design challenge when you talk about bringing Glenbrook up to speed. Yeah. So we are in the middle of working with the Massachusetts School Building Authority to address the needs of the 2 schools, but there has been a lot of work in the rearview mirror, and let's talk a little bit about the milestones that we've hit along the way to get us to where we are in the process. You want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So I think looking back at some of the things that have happened to date, and I think it's really important that the public understands, and I've heard some of this at town meeting when we did the actual approval for the initial funding, Questions come up about why we do things a certain way. Well, it's a very prescribed methodology from the Mass School Building Authority, or I'm going to say the MSBA from here on out. But what we do step by step can be found on their website, the Mass School Building Authority. You can look into the steps, but everything we do is prescribed by them. So back in 15, we did an internal facility study of both Glenbrook and Williams. That was on us to kind of supplement what we were doing from the statement of interest. But it all starts with statements of interest. So for years, we filed the statement of interest, coordinated with Superintendent O'Shea and the town manager, Lynn Simmons, and the select board as well, to file saying, hey, we would love to get into the program, to do the analysis, to see what is, to verify what we feel about the schools is what they feel about the schools, and to get on the list to possibly be reimbursed for X percent, which we're not even going to get into X percent yet until we go through the process. 21, we were at the town meeting asking for funding for the statement of interest in case we got into the pipeline, which we did, and now we have the funding in order to do the study. Next after that was to go into this eligibility period. We submitted a bunch of documents to the state, and then they asked us to, they approved that. We were at a meeting with them in April, and then just recently, we went through the whole OPM selection committee. OPM, be the owner's property manager or project manager, basically who's going to guide us through what is going to be the feasibility of the project. What's the location? What's the size of the school? All prescribed by the MSBA, so a very strict methodology. So if anybody has any questions about that, you feel free to reach out to us. But as well, the MSBA website is a treasure trove of information about what that methodology is.
Yeah. So you hit it really well, and sort of those key stages, just to summarize, was sort of submitting the statements of interest, signaling to the MSBA that we're interested in addressing the buildings. We think we have some deficiencies that require big solutions from the MSBA, and then receiving that invitation. And that was great news to this community when the MSBA let us know that we were going to be invited into their pipeline. And then you described that eligibility period, and part of that was pulling together a school building committee, middle school building committee, and also submitting, as you said, quite a bit of information to the MSBA so that they understood our educational profile, our enrollment profile, and hopefully that would put us on the road towards the feasibility study. I want to touch on the school building committee that was established shortly after the MSBA invited us in. Tell us a little bit about the composition of this really talented building committee that we have.
Yeah, I can't say enough about the committee that I'm working with as a colleague. They are, everybody supports one another. We've had, 4 or 5 meetings now, including subcommittee meetings, but the last time we did the high school project, and I was involved in the high school project from the school committee side, the committee was awesome. I think we learned from the committee last time, and the committee's even better this time. We have architects on the committee. We have an engineer on the committee. We have somebody that works with these OPM type contracts on a basis. We have educational expertise as well. People from the community like myself, and then we also have a wide variety of people from the town who are contributing, and it's been awesome. Shout out to Chad Thompson, procurement. He's been guiding us through the procurement process on this, and has hit all of our deadlines, and actually exceeded deadlines, and been pushing us to make sure that we're on track. But it can tell you that the technical expertise of some of the members is outstanding, and it's been really, really good to rely upon them in those certain areas as we go through the process.
Yeah, I've been in awe, and it's great to have folks like that you can lean on as you go through this process. And to underscore that, the select board is represented, the school committee is represented, and we feel like we have all the stakeholders at the table. The most recent, and I don't want to gloss over how much work you've put in and the building committee has put in terms of identifying an owner's project manager. So if you're able to, so that was a step that was recently completed by the building committee. We've identified an owner's project manager to help guide us and to represent Long Meadow as we go through the process. And this was a critical milestone that we hit with the building committee. Can you tell us a little bit about that selection process? Because it was, from my vantage point, pretty intense and really well done.
Yeah, the OPM is a really important piece to the whole methodology from the MSBA. So they will be here to guide us through the feasibility, design, making our decisions, giving the community options as to what this final solution might look like. And then we move on to the actual building project, where they will continue with us and be like our representative on the construction site on a daily basis. So basically, this is a really important step for us to go through. The committee as a whole established a subcommittee to do evaluations of the owner project of the OPMs. So we had OPMs submit an RFI to us, telling us their willingness to want to work with the town of Long Meadow in regards to this project. We had 6 submissions. We narrowed it down to 4. So we chose a subcommittee of 4 of us. And so basically we had the 6 OPMs who submitted packages about this thick. The members of the subcommittee gave up their weekend to review these for interviews the following week. And so out of the 6, we scored them and decided that there was 4 that were very appropriate to bring in for further interviews. The 4 finalists we had were Answer Advisory, NV5, which was the former Jocelyn Lesser, which did the high school project. We had Colliers, which did both the DPW project and the Adult Center project, and Vertex. Each of them had their own really special, unique places in the market and their answers and their approach. The committee spent an entire Friday morning listening to interviews, back and forth on questions with the interviewees. And then again, we came to a scoring system which took into account not only the submitted RFI, but the interviews and the totality, came up with a point system. And in the end, we decided to suggest to the committee as a whole that Colliers was the most appropriate based upon the point system to go forward with the OPM. Next, we had to go to the committee as a whole. We made our recommendation. The committee as a whole agreed with us and recommended to go forward with Colliers. We then made a motion to have Chad Thompson, procurement officer, to go ahead and negotiate with them pending an approval by the MSBA in a meeting that Marty and I have to go to on October 2nd.
Yeah. Yes, the procurement of the OPM, I hope Armin's explanation gives the community some sense of how diligent the building committee was and how precise they were in following the procurement requirements and the MSBA's requirements. So we're excited to bring Colliers on board potentially as our owner's project manager. That selection that the building committee has made will go to the MSBA, as Armin said, on October 2nd. We anticipate that the MSBA will support the selection that we've made locally. Colliers is an experienced firm. They've done a lot of work on the K-12 side, and they're familiar to us here in Long Meadow. So I think it was an excellent selection by the building committee.
Yeah, and I do think that I would just like to say that all of the interviewees that we had offered us a very good choice to move forward with the project. I do believe we came out with what was appropriate for our community, but I can tell you that the scoring was very close on some of the vendors, and there was a particular deep dive into this process where hard questions. We did background checks, so questions about background checks. And just checking out the financials for all of the companies as well. So if anybody out there has questions about that process, feel free, again, those materials are available.
Well done, and thanks to the selection subcommittee and to the building committee as a whole for going through that process. So assuming the MSBA approves Colliers on October 2nd as our project manager, the next step then would be to secure a design team and to launch the feasibility study. Would anticipate that securing the design team would be as intense, if not more intense, than securing an owner's project manager. But it's a really thorough process. In the end, I think it supports and helps making a good decision. So once a design team is brought on, then we're in the gate and ready to pursue a feasibility study. So that's a major stage that we'll have to work through to identify a solution. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that feasibility study and how that will go and what the intention of the feasibility study is.
Yeah, I think this is a really important part of the process, that this is where people's questions start getting answered, right? Like, how big is the school going to be? How many students is it going to fit? And we've already worked with the with the MSBA on some of those questions. What does schematic design look like for the number of students that are going to be there? Where is it going to be? I keep hearing that question, and I would say that it's a prescribed process with the MSBA. I can't say where it's going to be yet, but I can say that they will look at and evaluate at all of the pros and cons for locations throughout the district, and help us to make the best decision and taking into account traffic and where we have to keep in mind where are our internet trunks, where is the electric trunk coming down William Street. Right. Just those kind of questions.
So many considerations.
Yeah.
In sports, there's a saying, trust the process. And I think that's been my message to anybody that's asked, is that there's a process and that we have to trust it. It will, this during the feasibility study, and this is a process that could take anywhere from 12 to 24 months. It's a long, thorough, in-depth, drawn-out process, but it's that time where we study existing programming. We start to think about what future programming could look like. As Armin said, we're evaluating existing conditions. We're evaluating existing sites or potential sites. And then ultimately, you get to the end of that feasibility study stage over the course of many months, and hopefully you've studied a lot of different options, and that you've zeroed in on, you've identified a single option that we can bring to the community. And so it's a process that will certainly involve many stakeholders, many voices, town officials, parents, staff. We'll be looking to gather information with the OPM representing us and with the design team. So it's a really thorough process for sure. You mentioned, sort of the frequently asked questions that we get, and we get that a lot, is what's the solution? Is it two schools? Is it one school? Is it, if it were one school, where would it be? And those are the sort of trust the process questions, but I'm sure you face those out in the community as well. Yeah.
I do, and I think the most important thing you said about the facilities feasibility study, it comes out to community engagement. There will definitely be opportunities for anybody within the community to give input during this next 18 to 24 month period that we're talking about here. Yeah. Whether it be educational design, or I got my wish list from the custodial staff not too long ago, and the good thing is, we've not been through a project too long ago. It's about 10 years ago now when the high school was delivered. We learned lessons from that. And so we went through this visioning, educational, community engagement process. We know how to make it better this time. Right. And I think it went pretty well the first time. We have this beautiful facility here. My children have been the benefactors the benefactees of being able to attend this beautiful building. But in the end, it is the educational mission. And, we have great educators here who can only make that experience better with a better building.
Yeah, and sort of like thinking about, what are the spaces in the design that we need to support kids for the next 50 to 100 years, and so there is a significant amount of visioning that has to go on, and that can only be accomplished with a lot of the input that you're talking about, for sure. So there's one of the questions that I have heard is sort of who decides, who makes these major decisions, the MSBA, or are we making them locally? I've tried to emphasize that partnership, but you've had some experience with that.
Yeah, no, the partnership with the MSBA has been great.
Yeah.
We have a project manager who works with us on a, I would say, daily basis, right? Nina, who we can reach out to for any questions, guides us through the process, make sure we're understanding what the next step in the method is, and helping us make all the definite timelines to keep this on track. And based upon town meeting timelines and needing approvals, we go plus or minus 6 months in the timeline for certain things. But from that perspective, no, they've been great. They do have a process which ensures that all the schools are go through the same exact process for the reimbursement.
Yeah.
And once again, we'll go through this to determine what the reimbursement is, which will be affected by energy saving measures, visioning, education standards, and the town. But going through that, I think the local portion of that is, we have, who's our OPM? We go through this process, we locally select what our criteria is, and then we bring that to the MSBA, and then we'll have a meeting on, okay, yeah, Collier's met all of the requirements for it, let's go forward. So it's a good blend. We have a lot of local control on criteria and working directly with the project managers and everything else, but at the same time, the MSBA gives you a pretty good roadmap to follow.
Yeah, I think, I've been thinking about that lately. You said it really well. They're very tight on process, but the outcomes and the decisions are arrived at locally.
Right.
And they ultimately want to get behind solutions and projects that have local support, that drive locally determined educational outcomes and decisions. So that has been our experience, that that process is really helpful to make sure that we're doing things properly and in ways that are tried and true, for sure. And then I think the other thing that I've tried to emphasize along the way is that there are decisions that are made locally on this, and we don't go through gates without the involvement and engagement of the community. So when we submitted a statement of interest, that needed to be approved by the school committee and the select board. When we sought funding for the feasibility study, that had to be secured at town meeting. And so there's other critical junctures where we would need the support and approval of the town, where residents get to weigh in on and approve, or frankly, not approve the recommendations of the building committee. So you talk a little bit about that, when we arrive at a design, and then the town's engagement at that point.
Yeah, I got to say that working with through this project, it's been a great partnership with the town manager, with the select board. I've been in contact with members of the select board. Mr. Levine's on our committee.
Yeah.
The school committee, Nicole, has been wonderful. So it's a really good collaborative process. Everybody has been moving in the same direction. Of course, people are bringing up questions and asking along the way, the appropriate questions of, why are we doing this? Could we have done something different? Is there an alternative to this? What's the cost implications of the decisions we're making? And so we are given that leeway as well by the MSBA. I think a key was the OPM negotiation. Chad negotiated with Colliers. We have presented what our negotiation with Colliers is to the MSBA, and we're hoping on October 2nd they agree with us.
Yeah.
But that is not something where they set like a price, or not something that they say you can only pay this much or this little. And Chad was able to appropriately negotiate with the vendor.
Yeah.
And we'll see that. But then going forward, there's going to be a lot more milestones that we're going to need everybody to continue this path on where we are together. And the only way we do that is by being transparent, Having sessions like this, having a bunch of sensing sessions, I will say our OPM has already put together a plan that was presented to us about all the next steps on having community engagement, involving people in the community in community sessions, and to the point of getting them done. But it goes, so then we get to places I think where you're leading is for the next step of once we get past schematic design, how do we get the project funded? How do we get schematic design approved? Yeah. So we'll have to have town meetings coming up in 2 or 3 years where we're definitely going to have the engagement of the community to take that to the next step and say, hey, is this what we want to go forward for our next school? Well
said. I mean, ultimately, the residents get to determine if the project scope and the project budget makes sense for this community, and that's an important milestone. That's a few years into the future for sure. Mm-hmm. And so, it's an exciting opportunity for us. Certainly, the MSBA is aware that we are interested in incorporating both Williams and Glenbrook into the feasibility study. Technically, the Glenbrook statement of interest was accepted, but really we have an opportunity to study solutions that make sense for both schools. And one of those solutions, frankly, has been the idea of a single unified middle school. And we think that there's economies of scale, educationally and fiscally, that we can gain by having a combined site. But again, the feasibility study we have to go through that process to understand if a single site solution makes sense educationally and makes sense fiscally with all the other challenges that might come with that. So it's exciting work. I want to just sort of publicly thank Armin as the chair of our building committee and the entire building committee, because their work has begun in earnest. They have been putting in some serious time, and as we get into the feasibility study stage, their work will continue to ramp up. So I'd say consider this one of many opportunities that we will take advantage of to update the community, and as we move down this exciting path. So Armin, thanks for joining us today, and if anyone has any questions or ideas or thoughts, we can be reached, and our information is on the district website. So thank you.